Hello and welcome back to this lecture series on Python setup. So in the previous video, we have set up our Python latest version, and in this video, we are going to use that Python to integrate it into an IDE or code editor to write and execute our code. The first code editor that we will be downloading and using is Visual Studio Code. Now just go to Google and type Visual Studio Code, and you will get the official Visual Studio Code's website first. So click on that. So the first thing that you see is the user interface of the Visual Studio. It looks very good, and it is very easy to navigate between a lot of tools that you can have inside. And on the left hand side, you can find a button that says download for Windows stable build. So if you're using a Windows system, you can directly click on to download the latest version available. Now on top you can see that version 1.73 is now available, and you can read about the new fixes from the time of release of this video. So I'm going to download this now. So I'm going to click on the Windows button, and yes, here I'm getting my setup downloaded. And once the setup is downloaded, you will be able to open the setup. So before we do that, we will just see how Visual Studio Code is in action, right? So we'll scroll down. As you can see, the user interface has a lot of different colors to express each and every part of the programming language. For example, a variable or a function, each and everything has its own colors. And once you declare a variable, if you want to use it again, the autocomplete system of the text editors will definitely help you. And as you can see, we have streamline debugging, and it does very fast and powerful editing, and the code navigation and refactoring. Refactoring is nothing but renaming your variables and files. And source control, that is, if many people are working on the same project, then the changes that they do will be reflected here, so by showing the code difference like this. And this is great for collaboration as well, right? So these are some of the extensions that are available inside VS Code. So we have Python, we have Jupyter, we have Pylance, we have C, C++, and everything. So we will be using the Python, right? So we'll do that once we enter the IDE, the code editor. So we'll start setting up the code editor now. Yes, so this is the setup, and inside you can see the license agreement. You can read this. And after that, you have to accept the agreement, and then it will lead you to the next page. And here you will have to select your directory, right? So here it's C users ASR app data for me, so I don't want that. I want it in my C users itself. So I'll go to C. Yeah, I'll click OK. So now I have the VS Code for both my users. And yeah, so you can create a start menu folder, or you can choose not to. So that is completely up to you. And I want a desktop icon, so I'll click with that. And add open with code action is something that once you right click on a particular code that you have saved in, let's say, your desktop, now it will provide you with an option of opening that particular code directly into Visual Studio, and that is a very useful one. So you can do that, and if you want, you can add that. I really don't use that, so I don't need it. And add to path is default, so just let it be. Do not tamper with this, because if you do, then we will not be able to use Python everywhere in the system, right? So this is the destination location, everything is good. And yes, I've clicked install. Now it's getting installed. Now all we have to do is wait, and once the setup is installed, we will jump in and we will start exploring all the relevant extensions that we need to have before getting into our first ever Python code, right? Yes, my setup is complete, and I will launch the Visual Studio Code, and I will click finish. Now, without me doing anything, the Visual Studio Code launches, and I will make this bigger. I'll make this full screen. And so this is the version 1.73's notes. You can read that if you want. And I will close this to make it look bigger. And so this untitled one is a new, like, fresh file that is open here, and once you start writing in it, you can save it as your code, right? So before doing all that, we need to get into the extensions part, like what extensions are very useful for our Python coding, right? So for the extensions, what we're supposed to do is go to this panel on the left hand side, and as you can hover over each icon, you'll be able to explore what that is. Now this is the explorer, that is the file explorer, and here is the search, and here is the source control, and here's the run and debug, and here is our extension, right? So we will go into this, and this is Docker, this is Jupyter Notebooks, and this is PowerShell. Now PowerShell is a terminal. And we'll go to extensions. As you can see, these are already installed extensions that are there, and if they are not there, no issues. You can always search for the name and you can install it. Now the one thing that I like to do is keep my code in a very good looking format. So I would like to go for this extension called Prettier. Now if you click on this, as you can see, this is a code formatter, and it makes the format of the code look good so that you won't get confused if you're typing a large amount of code. So I would like to have that. So I will install it. And the first and foremost important thing that we need to do is we need to make sure we have a runner, right? So there is this extension called Code Runner. And if I click on that, I have this particular extension, and as you can see, it runs all these languages, right? So we have our Python here also, or if you want other runners, there are Python specific runners that you can download and install. But since this is a single platform where I can do multiple languages, I will use this. So I'm installing it here. And there's one more I would like to use, that is the linter. So yeah, linter is an extension for VS Code that provides linting for multiple languages in one package. Yes, so this is not language specific. I mean, it works for Python also, so I will use that. And yes, I've installed it. Now all my extensions are installed, and next I would go to the next step of writing the code, getting ready to write the code. So I need to create a file for me to write code on, right? So whenever you open the VS Code, it'll always not have an untitled file, and since it's my first time, it is already open. And if it is empty, right, so I can go to file, I can go to new text file or new file, right? So I go to new file, and here you can see there are two different options. I can use a text file, and if I save it as a Python file, I can use it as a Python file, or I can use a Jupyter Notebook. So now Jupyter Notebook is nothing but a Python file only, but I can divide my code into cells and modules and run each of the cells independently. And I can provide all my instructions, commands, and my textual data in between two codes, right? So that is what notebook is for, and we might be using it in the future, but right now we need only a text file. So once I click on that, my untitled one is back, and here is where I'll be writing my code. Now I am going to write my first code, and since this is in Python already, right now it's in text file, and if I save it, it becomes save it as a .py file, it becomes a Python file. So let's do that first. So I'll go to save as, and I would write my hello underscore world. So that is my name, and I would save it as .py with the extension. And here you can alternatively save this as a Python file, right? So hello world, the Python file, I'll save it. Now hello world is hello world.py right here, as you can see. Now I can use my Python functions and everything here, and below, if you notice, you can see that there's discovering Python interpreters. Now Visual Studio has recognized that this is a Python file, and now we'll use Python interpreters to actually, read this, interpret this file. Now the first thing that we will be doing is write the print function, right? So Python has a print function that displays whatever message that you give to the print function. So write print. Once you click print, open brackets, and inside it'll ask for values, right? So you put a double quotes here. So double quotes generally indicates a string, which is textual data that we are going to be displaying. So in print, write hello world, HELLO space world. Yes. Now what my Python function is supposed to do is it is supposed to print this string hello world onto my console. Now once you completed your program, click Ctrl S, which is a shortcut to save your program. And the next thing we'll be doing is we need to run this program. So there are two different ways in which you can run the program. One is you can go to PowerShell, right? Once you go to PowerShell, you will get a terminal that is opening on the bottom of your screen. Now make sure this side panel goes off. You can click PowerShell again to do that. And now, as you can see, PCC users Acer is where I am. Let me clear the screen so it is visible better. And yes, so how to make your code look bigger is once you go into this part of the editor, the part where you write the code, click on Control and scroll up so that the code is visible better for you. And for the video, I'm making it bigger for you to see. And inside the terminal, what we are going to do is we are going to run this program, right? So in C users Acer, my terminal is right now waiting, but my program is actually there in V code files, Python projects, YR programs, hello.py, right? So this is the path that is there. So I would go there. So first I'll click V, and now it's gone to V. And in a Python command, in a terminal command, I give cd space and the file name that I want to go, that is the code files, right? So I give that. I have to give it in a string, that is cd code files. Yeah, so now it works. So once I give that, I'll clear the screen. So inside code files, I have to go to Python projects. So cd quotes Python projects, and I've gone inside that, and inside I need to go to YR programs. So YR underscore programs, and here you go. So now we are there inside the directory where hello world.py is there. So if I click this command, say dir, I should be able to see all the files that are there inside that particular directory. So I have hello world.py here. So these are just Windows terminal commands. These are no way related to the Python commands. So what we're going to do is we are going to use the terminal to run this particular file, right? So the command for that is Python space and to make sure that Python is already installed. So first we'll give the command Python. So once I give the command Python, I should be getting this Python version and my system information right? And a little help with all the commands for Python. And this is the Python console that we use to check if Python is installed. So we click Ctrl Z and enter. So that will exit out of the Python console. Now I'll clear my screen. Now what I'm supposed to do is I do Python space and the file name of my Python file, right? So it's hello underscore world dot py. Now once I give enter, as you can see, I'm getting the output hello world. So what I've done right now is I have created a file, Python file, which prints the hello world string, and I'm able to observe the output here. And how I ran it is I used this file to run using the Python command inside a terminal. Now there are two ways to run a Python file. I can run it inside inside the editor itself, or I can use my terminal to run it. Now this terminal, I'm accessing it through the editor, right? Now I'm going to run the program inside the editor itself. As you can see, once I click this run, immediately I'm able to see running Python in this whole directory, and this is the output. And after the output, the consoler is telling me that it is done with the program and it is exited. Now we have successfully run our first Python code in both terminal and the Visual Studio editor, right? So once we have done with this, the one thing that we need to know is how do I collaborate with other developers when I'm writing the code, right? So I go to extensions here, and there is an extension called live server. Once you type live server and click enter, you will receive this whole list, and click on the first one. And as you can see, I will close this so that you can see this better, right? So this is the live server extension, and you scroll down, you can see that how live server is being used, the details, the contributions and everything. And you can see that once you create this live server, you will have a button called go live, which will connect you to the server, which will actually be a button to turn on and turn off the server, right? So this way you can actually collaborate with others by creating a common pool of code where you and another person can edit the code simultaneously, and you can work together, right? And this can be used also to start a server on which your code will run, right? For example, I'll scroll down, and as you can see here, in this video that they are showing, this is the HTML document that they are viewing. So when I'm working with this HTML document, I want to change a small thing. So generally what I do is I power down my server, change this document, and then power up my server again, hence making the server read the new document. But live server will continuously link my work with the live server that I'm hosting it on, and once I change any value here, it will automatically change there in a seamless and live way. So that is very useful for web development and other server related operations that you're doing using Python, right? So I will install it. And thank you so much for watching this video. We'll see you in the next one.